Do you like a challenge?
You have proved yourself worthy. Will you join me? You make me sad.
Do instance and sorcery cards scare you?
In response.
Sound like a voice.
Does this look like a great time? Welcome to Double Strike Studios. My name is Lucas, and I will be your guide to Nethroi, Apex of Death. This cat nightmare beast is a 5/5 with Death Touch and lifelink for only 2 generic, 1 white, green, and black. Neth, however, should rarely be cast as normal. No, what we want to do with this deck is get the most bang for a buck using the new Mutate ability. Whenever you mutate, you may return a total power of 10 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Pretty great, right? Now I know what you're thinking, we start with Buried Alive or Entomb, but this deck would not be a challenge then if we could play with everything at our disposal, right? So why not spice things up a bit using a companion? Meet Nethroi's favorite little ooze, Umari the Collector. This 4/5 for 2 generic and 2 hybrid green-black challenges us to play with only one type of card in our deck. So for us, we'll be going for all creatures. And because we've accepted his challenge, as long as he's on the field, all our creature spells are going to cost 1 less mana to cast. Now this deck is going to live in the graveyard. Not only are we going to need to find ways to fill the graveyard, we're going to have to find ways to refill it after we've been Bajuka Bogged or Crypt. We don't get to play with the good interaction spells like Frozen Grip or Swords, so we're going to need to find some creatures to beat their replacements. This deck rewards understanding when to really hit the throttle, so try thinking about holding back when you see that Urza player over there has 2 islands ready. Finally, when selecting cards for this deck, we're not necessarily looking at mana cost, but its power instead, as we want to get the largest number of beneficial creatures at a given time. With that out of the way, let's get into the deck. With Nethroi as our commander, we need to look at our graveyard as our second hand and find the best ways to get resources there. We start with probably one of the best 1-drops in the deck, Stitcher Supplier. Mill 3 on Enter the Battlefield and Death really helps the deck start moving. Putrid Imp and Lothra's Troll help us get rid of those pesky cards in hand. Don't they understand we don't care about them unless they're in the graveyard? Satyr Wayfinder will let us hit a land drop on turn and also add more fuel to the graveyard. Stinkweed Imp. Dredge 5, need I say more? With Acolyte of Affliction, we only get to mill 2. However, we get to return 1 card from our graveyard to our hand, letting us return lands that may have been milled there. Now for a spicy choice with Thought Gouger. First, Thought Gouger gets a +1/+1 counter for each card in our hand. Then we must discard our hand. But once he leaves the battlefield, we draw cards equal to number 1/1 counters on him. So even if an opponent exiles him, we still get to draw. Now Genesis only has real value in the grave, but once he's in his happy home, he lets us return a creature card at upkeep for only 3 mana. The final graveyard filler in our deck is a powerful one with Underrealm Lich. This bad boy is a better form of Sylvan Library for Graveyard Matters decks. Each card we draw, we instead will look at the top 3 and put 1 to hand, rest a grave. He also has the ability to pay for a life and tap him to make him indestructible, make him very hard to remove. With Umari as our companion, we don't get to run any of those cool mana rocks, so say goodbye to Soul Ring and hello to Llanowar Elves, a classic mana dork. Deathrite Shaman comes next, letting us take advantage of any lands we may have sent to our graveyard, or if our opponent's playing fetch lands, we can use those instead. Veteran Explorer is an interesting ramp card, speeding up the game for all players by letting them get 2 basics onto the battlefield untapped when it dies. We're hoping this buys us goodwill around the table, but sometimes it ends up with an opponent being very angry at us as they're a 5-color deck with 0 basics. Don't feel sorry for them. Now for the most Chad of all ramp creatures, Steve. He's so hot, look at that body. Take me now. Shaman of the Forgotten Ways ramps us for 2, and if we ever somehow hit 11 mana, we can significantly reduce everyone's life total. Wood Elves, Farhaven Elf, and Burnished Heart will all help us find the color of mana that we're missing. We're also running a Tireless Tracker that will give us all the clues we need whenever we have lands hit. We're running Sylvala, Explorer Returned. Not as broken as our other version or expensive, Sylvala has a chance of letting us mutate Nethroi right on turn 4. Finally, we have a sad choice with Sad Robot. All his life will ever be is ramping us for a basic and drawing a card. Being without things like Wrath of God or Nature's Claim forces us to rely on creatures to have the bits of interaction we're looking for. They may not be as good as the spells we want, but they'll get the job done. Giant Killer has Adventure, which will let us kill 1 big threat at instant speed, then later on have an annoying tapper. Spirit of the Labyrinth will make the wheel players cry as we only want to play fair magic here. Collector Oof also makes that 1 player cry who went turn 1 Soul Ring into Signet. Kosali Pridemage will give its life to destroy whatever pesky artifact or enchantment is getting on our nerves, where Reclamation Shade will do this while entering the battlefield. Playcrafter will make everyone sack a creature or planeswalker, and if they can't, they must say goodbye to a card in their hand. Eidolon of Rhetoric helps us keep up with everyone else by limiting the amount of spells per turn by 1. Murderous Rider and Ravenous Chupacabra will both destroy a problem creature on the board, where Murderous Rider has the added benefit of being able to destroy planeswalkers as well. Acidic Slime will destroy anything but a creature that enters the battlefield, so get ready to destroy your opponent's only blue source. With Nethroi as our commander, we're fine with wiping the board, for all it does is remove threats from all other boards and fueling our graveyard. For this, we're going to run a Cataclysm Gearhulk, Magister of Worth, and Realm Cloak Giant. A quick note about the Magister of Worth. Sure, it's a vote card, but for being an all creatures deck, your opponents will rarely want you to bring back everything from the grave. Now sometimes, Nethroi will get stuck on the field with no way to return him to the command zone, but luckily we can re-trigger his ability by casting other mutate spells on him. Gem Razor and Sawtusk Demolisher do this job for cheap and also can be played early if threats show up on the board. All of our creatures get extra value because we know we'll be getting them back using Nethroi's ability. Sporefog will make any Xenagos player frown, knowing that they'll be doing 0 damage if they swing our way. Selfless Spirit helps us stay on the board by giving Indestructible to all creatures on our board. Fierce Empath and Recruiter of the Guard are both going to help us look through our deck and find a creature. Then we got Runetail, Kitsune Ascendant. This is one of those weird cards that Wizard made during its wild and crazy days, and because most of the time it's going to enter and flip right away, just treat this as an enchantment that says, prevent all damage that will be dealt to creatures you control. Liliana's Standard Bearer gives us the ability to draw after a board wipe, or we can just flash in a 3/1 for a fancy block. Since we need our creature spells to resolve, we're going to be running this Cat Snake Boy, which will make all our creature spells uncounterable. Remember that when you cast a mutate spell, it's a mutate creature spell. Resplendent Angel is a neat card that will give us flyers for padding out our life total. Having a Brooding Saurian, we don't need to worry about our opponents taking our creatures. With Disciple of Bolas, we get the value of draw, life gain, and putting a creature back in our graveyard. Because we love keywords, we're going to be running an Audric, which will help spread those keywords to all creatures, and if you happen to bring them back with this big bad dino boy, your opponents will be shaking in their boots. Beast Whisperer will let us draw every time we cast a creature, which shouldn't be that hard in this deck. Next up we got Revelark and Sun Titan, letting us grab some more value from our grave. We got Kakush the Evening Star and my boy Gary, both will drain our opponents for life and let us gain all that damage as life to ourselves. And if we're looking to weaponize all that life gain, we got ourselves a Vito, Thorn of the Dusk Rose. He's going to point all that life gain as damage to one opponent. We also have an Archangel Athune, which will pump our board every time we gain life. And finally we have Hornet Queen. This little lady is going to fill the board with some Death Touch flyers, keeping our opponents at bay. Now with an all creatures deck, we normally would go for a good old fashioned Crater Hoof and Avenger of Zendikar as our go-to win, but we decided to build something a little bit different over easy to win. To start out, you're going to need a Carrion Feeder or Viscera Seer as a sack outlet. Then you're going to need a Cruel Serpent or a Poison Tip Archer to benefit each time we sack a creature. And finally, you're going to need to fuel this jerry-rigged machine gun with Hollowed Spirit Keeper or Elendra the Dusk Rosed. Both are going to create loads of tokens to use as ammo. Oh, and for overkill we have a Mothra, so you can do it all over again. If you have a decent sized board and these key cards, congratulations! You've just made the Nethroi minigun. Nethroi All Creatures is a fun build that will be looked at as just a gimmick from your opponents. You'll make them think twice when we go off and win in one key turn. My name is Lucas, and remember, just because you've been in quarantine for the past 3 months does not mean you get to arrive at your local game store smelling like it. Like deodorant is not that hard. Like there was no shortage of deodorant or like shampoo during this whole time. It was toilet paper, that's it.